Hello, everybody. It's Wednesday. I'm Brian Friedman. I'm your host for Benivo Bites, the world's first global mobility technology show. And we've got a fabulous episode for you today. So I'm delighted. We've got so many guests and we're dealing with such an important subject. So I think, a lot of you will know how it works. Let us know if you're out there. Click on the button. So, leave a comment, write some in the comments box, say where you are. We're expecting quite a lot of people, obviously, from India joining us today. I expect we're also going to have people from all over the world joining us. So please do join us. Tell us that you're there. Say what's going on. Say what the weather's like, what company you're with. Just give us some of the information. So people to come in. I see Elisa has come in from Bangalore. Hi there, Elisa. The numbers are creeping up gradually. We are talking about India domestic moves today. That's a really, really big issue. It seems to be one of the hottest issues in global mobility at the moment. And I suppose the question is why? Why is India domestic mobility such a big issue? And it follows by the second question, well, what are we going to do about it? If we know it's a big issue, or we think it's a big issue, people are telling us it's a big issue, what are we going to do about it? And this is a tech show. So we're going to show you some technology that really helps with managing India domestic moves. And we're going to get into that. We've also got a benchmarking report, and we're going to show you how you can download that and talk through some of the findings so you can really understand what's going on with India domestic moves. And let me see, we are getting people from all over the world coming on board. Let's just see who we've got. We've got Fiona from Paris. We've got Susan Myers from Dallas. We've got Bridget from Chicago. We've got Mary Lou Cohen from Minneapolis. We've got Nakib from Bangalore. People are all over the place from Stockholm. So it's obviously a subject that is of interest to people all over. And we're going to be talking about that. We've got a tremendous panel today. I'm delighted to say we've got, apart from Nitsan and myself, we've got Suresh Balan, and in fact, he's based in Bangalore, as indeed are our other guests. And we've got Venkatesh Kulkarni, also based in Bangalore. We've got Rohini Ramya from Bangalore, and we've got Pankaj Bhatia, again, from Bangalore. So we've got, 4 really well-known, respected mobility specialists, all based in the Bangalore area, all with slightly different stories to tell. And we're going to be talking about global mobility. And we know that Bangalore is the #1 destination for internal transfers within the Indian market, but there are plenty of other destinations, and we'll talk generally about how that market is going. In terms of what else we've got coming up on the show, we've got next week, of course, we rotate Benivo Bites and The View from the Top. And next week on The View from the Top, we're meeting Eric Tate. Eric is a vice president at Ayres, one of the leading relocation companies in the world. And we're going to be talking about his career story, about some of the exciting stuff that's going on, and their very, very optimistic story about what's happening beyond 2020. And I was chatting with Eric the other day, and I can tell you it's a really upbeat story in maybe these gloomy times. So we'll get on to that later. And then the week after that, i.e. 2 weeks today, back on Benivo Bites, we're going to be launching a really incredible new assignment management platform. And you don't want to miss this. Forget having to pay huge implementation fees. Forget spending months and months implementing. We've got an assignment management platform that can be implemented within a couple of weeks, and maybe even less than that, and with no implementation fees whatsoever. So there's lots of fascinating stuff coming down. On Benivo Bites, I always start by just saying a little bit about what Benivo is, because I appreciate that some people come on board and they don't really know much about Benivo. So let me just, in a sentence, and I won't take up more of your time than that, is just say that what we try to do at Benivo is to create what we call an Amazon-style user experience backed up with fintech and an end-to-end mobility management system. And what I mean by that is, if you're buying something these days on Amazon, the first thing you do is read the user reviews. And we've taken that concept into mobility so that assignees can educate other assignees. One generation can educate the next. And we use user experience to really enhance the employee experience, the assignee experience. We've got a revolutionary fintech solution. And as I said, we'll be demonstrating next 2 weeks' time an amazing end-to-end mobility management system. But I'm not here to advertise, so that's all I am going to say. But of course, there is something really, really exciting, of course, that we do every week. And that is we talk about immigration. And we are really honored that we have Julia Onslow Cole as our resident immigration expert. So without further ado, I'm going to bring Julia onto the show, and she's going to talk to us about some of the immigration issues facing India, both inbound and outbound. Julia,
hi, Brian.
It's evening for you, so I'm guessing you're still in Dubai.
Yes.
Okay. Well, we really appreciate you giving up your Wednesday evenings to be with us. I hope your husband doesn't mind object too much. He's out there with you, isn't he?
Yes, fine. Mind you, he bought me a mug I said to him, "Oh, we need some mugs," and he bought this set of mugs saying, "I know who's the boss." And then he gave me my coffee in it. So I'm not sure if that was a bit of a backhanded compliment.
Well, take them all. So Julia, tell us a little bit about India and what are the issues that we're facing at the moment.
Yes, thank you. And I just wanted to say thank you to Manal Galari and Sebin Ginny from our Fragaman team in India who helped me prepare this. But I think it's worth just reminding everyone the extreme measures that India put in place on the 23rd of March last year, when they completely shut the borders, so no one could go out or in. And there was such a lot of people who were actually stuck. And I remember particularly a whole group of people who were traveling to Indonesia, and then they were not allowed inside Indonesia, and then they couldn't go back to India. So it really was a very difficult time for everyone. And then on May the 6th, they started opening the borders and they launched an evacuation and repatriation program. And the key thing to say is that there's still a suspension on scheduled incoming and outgoing international passenger airline services. And that suspension's been extended until the end of this month. And so meanwhile, all incoming and outgoing travel is only permitted via non-scheduled flights under the Vande Bharat mission. It's called VBM and air bubble arrangements. And India now has bilateral travel air bubble arrangements with 24 countries. And VBM is one of the largest programs in the world, and it's facilitated international travel of more than 5.1 million people since May the 6th last year. So the other thing to say, which is such good news, is although India still stands second amongst the world's worst hit countries by the pandemic, the country has been experiencing a really significant slowdown in active cases since about September of last year. And they're really having a very strong recovery. But it's very important when traveling to India that you specifically look at the health and safety requirements of each state, because many require quarantine, and some at institutions, some you're allowed to quarantine at your own home, but sometimes you have to do the COVID test before and after crossing internal borders by road. So it's really, really important that you get all those updates. The other thing to say is on remote working, it's very strict requirement that if you're as a visitor in India, you cannot work. And we've had quite a few clients who've got into trouble on this. And then what happens is that the authorities go back to what's called the undertaker, which is the HR person that signed off the letter of invitation. So you have to be very careful.
Seriously.
Yeah, the undertaker. Yeah.
Okay.
So you have to, because they're giving undertakings. So you have to be very careful about those, that. And we've had also people who finished an assignment and then couldn't travel and then want to carry on working, and they've been had penalties. The other thing is, if you have to move to another city in India and you're remotely working, then if that happens for more than 8 weeks, you have to tell the FRRO, the Foreigners Regional Registration Office, that you've actually moved places. That's quite strict. And also, if you want to actually change jobs when you're in India and work for a new company altogether, then you have to exit and come back in. So I think they're very much important things to say. The other thing to say is, obviously, there's a lot of outbound movement from India. And at the end of last year, it was getting quite good, and the consulates and the embassies were really getting back to normal. But unfortunately, with all the new COVID cases overseas, outside of India, a lot of them are now on restricted services. So you have to really look and see for each embassy and consulate, what they're requiring. Many are short-staffed. Many are now allocating appointments, and there's longer processing times. So, that's really, really important. And then I also wanted to say that with the VBM flights, we also have had reports from clients that there have been some difficulties and discrepancies between what the airlines tell them and then what the receiving country says when they go. So you must be very careful about checking on both ends. And also, we've had some clients who found the best thing to do is to actually get a visit visa to a destination that they can travel to, and then from that destination go on to their ultimate destination. But if you're going back from India to take up work, to resume work in another country, and you're transiting, then you must get a proper transit visa. So those were a few things I wanted to say. And I know, Pankaj, we have a little green room discussion beforehand, and he was saying that there's a lot of interest in India about what's happening in the US. And I did cover that in full last week in View from the Top, and we're going to do it again very shortly. But the good news is that the Biden administration keeps on pushing out executive orders. That's very positive. They have this citizenship bill. It's because of the makeup of the Senate, it's actually unlikely to go through, but it shows such good intention about what they really want to do. Of particular interest to Indian citizens will be that they want to kind of abolish the limits on different nationalities and the quotas. So that's really positive. And also, I think for this cap season, the H-1Bs, won't change. Very recently, in the last few days, the Department of Labour said they'll delay the effective date of the rule requiring a restructure of wages. So I think that, the H-1Bs cap season will be very much as it has been for this year. But I know that that's very much of an interest in India, and we will cover it again on View from the Top.
Okay, so thank you so much, Julia. What I'm going to do now is to bring Nitsan Udan on screen, and I'm going to, we'll see you later, Julia, but I'm going to put you backstage for a bit. So let's bring on Nitsan and Julia. Nitsan, how are you doing?
Very good. Hi, everyone.
Okay, and Nitsan, the reason I brought you on stage is that we've got this special focus on India. We've got all the India experts coming up in a moment. But before we do, I know we've produced a benchmarking report all on India domestics, and I know it has just exploded in terms of the level of interest in it. But I was wondering if you just want to tell us a little bit about, about it and how people can actually get to see it.
Sounds good. So if you would like to share my screen, I'll even show how to download it live. Just need to our website. Very, very simple, benivo.com. And here on the top, there is a green banner talking about how to click and download the report. The report has been downloaded now by 200 companies from all over the world, just showing the amount since we released it in last Thursday, so under a week already, 200 companies, and I think just showing the amount of interest there is in the topic. So if you're going to click here, it will just open, and I can enter here my details and download the report. In the report itself, let me give a quick overview of what we can see there. So it's the benchmark report covering interviews that were conducted, one-to-one confidential interviews with 16 companies, sharing a little bit about what are the companies and what they're seeing on the market. So you can see all the information here. And then looking into what are the current challenges, what are companies offering, right? So is there a specific India domestic policy? Who is managing that? We've seen a trend that more and more global mobility teams are being asked to manage also the India domestic policy, and that's something that's expected to continue. 44% is the current percentage. There is a full benchmark here in terms of what companies are offering. Is it money? Is it services? The majority are offering money, and when money is provided, is it on lump sum and or reimbursement? Even the benchmark on the amount, how much is being outsourced and in-house, and even the time savings that can be achieved by providing better support. So a very detailed analysis, easy to use, available on our site, and we invite everyone to download it. It's available completely for free. As you have my screen shared, I'll also give a quick teaser to what is coming next, where after the panel discussion, I'll share a bit more about the most innovative solution that is available to support now using technology, support domestic relocation in India. If you struggle to read what's on the screen now, it's because it's in Kannada, which is the local language in Karnataka, in the city where Bangalore is. We support 9 Indian local languages. Of course, we will be able to do the full demo in English, but it's really the first platform that solves the specific needs of India domestic relocation, how to deliver trust and relationship that is so important in the culture through a product, and how to be able to minimize the manual work for mobility team or HR teams, as well as improve the employee experience. I'm sure we're going to talk about it more today. There is such a big competition now on talent in India with so much domestic growth that employee experience becomes even more important than ever. And we'll show how all of that can be provided through a digital experience, which means also a very affordable solution, and with hundreds of people already relocating in India last year using that tool. So that's all will come later, but back to you, Brian.
Okay, so thank you for Nitsan. I mean, please do, everybody, download this report if you've got even a vague interest in India domestic. It's completely free, it's no obligation, and it's fascinating. Certainly, I've had a number of emails from people who've downloaded it who said, actually, this is such a great thing to do. It's such a topical area. Just to give you an idea, one of the key findings that came out of it is 82% of HR leaders are not satisfied with the support that they're getting handling India domestic moves. So there really is an issue out there, and we need, as an industry, to get on top of it. And we're going to be talking about that. But let me just now bring on our very special guests from Bangalore. So let me just bring them on. So welcome to our very special guests. It's wonderful that we've got you all here. So let me just start. Maybe we can just do a bit of introductions. Rahini, just maybe we'll start with you. Just tell us a bit about yourself and your involvement in relocation.
Well, it's been about 22 years, Brian. I've been a global mobility professional starting from Toyota and along with Pankaj, of course, in Accenture, and most recently with KPMG, where I used to head a tax team. So a lot of my focus has been on tax, but also with immigration and social security as well. So in terms of domestic relocation, not as much experience as international relocation, but having dealt with the same team sometimes, which also deal with international relocations, I do know some of the pain points that my clients have had to face with the domestic relocations as well.
Okay, we'll certainly get into some of those pain points. And I know you've got obviously a specific expertise in tax, so we might talk about the tax aspects. I appreciate they're not as significant as for an international move, but we'll talk about those. Now, Suresh, tell me about yourself and tell me about.
Hi, good morning. Good morning, all. Good afternoon, good evening. I have been with the mobility space for almost 16 years now. Currently leading the global operations for immigration with HCL based out of Bangalore. I lead the complete mobility operations based out of Bangalore.
And where was home for you? Where did you grow up?
I started my career with Deloitte back in Hyderabad. Worked for a couple of years, then moved to Infosys, been with Infosys, and thereafter moved to HCL. So two Indian IT organization plus one consulting firm, and almost 16 years experience. Yeah.
Okay. And Venkatesh, tell us about yourself and your background.
Yeah. Hi. Thanks, Brian. Thanks for having us today, and hello to all. Well, my name is Venkatesh. I'm from Robert Bosch, and I have been associated with Bosch since 20 plus years now. And I have been managing global mobility, the entire travel solutions, end to end, and not only international, but also inland domestic. So, yeah, I look forward to the session today.
And how many people, actually, I should ask both you and Suresh, how many people do you move domestically in India?
Okay, we move close to about 1,000 people a year, close to 1,000.
Yeah. And Suresh?
We also do close to 2,000 team. In fact, HCL as an organization have Envy. It's something called New Vistas location, which is outside, in tier 2 cities, tier 3 and tier 2 cities. So we will have definitely a mass movement. For instance, we have HCL Madurai or HCL Nagpur or HCL Vijayawada, wherein we, once in a while or once in a year, we will have mass movement. So, for instance, I would say about 2,000 cases per year is what we also have.
Okay, I think that's one of the points that for people that don't know India and what's going on in the market. It's staggering. Many companies move, 100, 200 people a year, and they think that's a big program. But here we're talking about a couple of thousand people being moved domestically in a year, and in many cases, global mobility has not been involved with it. So, I mean, we're talking about a whole new area where there's a crying need for mobility to be involved, and mobility is getting more involved. But Pankaj, tell us a bit about yourself.
Right. So thanks, Brian. So yeah, I have been in the mobility field for around 25 years, having worked with organizations like KPMG, Accenture, Honeywell, and Genpact, leading teams at the India regional and global levels, having handled domestic and international moves as well. But I think this topic is a little closer to my heart because I myself have kind of moved domestically like 3 times in my different organizations. So I've kind of gone through the full life cycle, having been a customer in terms of being relocated as well as being on the other side managing the domestic relocations as well.
And let's just talk a little bit about that because we're talking about some of the highlights from this report, and I said, the report is here. I'll sort of wave it at the camera. That's the old-fashioned paper version, but as Nitsan's told you, just go on benivo.com and you can download it. But some of the findings were, well, we knew 80% of HR leaders are not satisfied with the solutions that are currently in place, and we know that thousands of people are being moved every year in organizations from India. But let's just get a feel for the scale of India, because I think, obviously those of you sitting in India will be very familiar, but maybe those sitting in Europe or in the USA or Asia may not be quite so familiar with the sheer scale and complexity of an international move. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I was told that there's is it 28 states and 8 territories? I mean, tell me a bit about India in terms of its states and its cultures, and indeed number of languages within India.
Right.
Yeah.
So you're right, Brian. Like 28 states. Sorry, go ahead.
So I think we're losing you, Pankaj.
So yeah. So what I was mentioning is, you're right, Brian. There are 28 states, 8 union territories. I think the population of India is like around 1.3 billion folks. So I think that's a lot of people. The culture actually differs significantly from each state, and not just actually from each state. Even within the city, there are different cultures, different practices, etc., which are there. The number of official languages is perhaps something like 22, but in terms of the dialects, etc., if we kind of include that, it goes into a few thousands as well. I know we Venkatesh and Suresh spoke about maybe a couple of thousand people that they're moving, but I think what is even more, I would say, awesome is the hiring size of some of the IT organizations. Some of the numbers which have been reported recently, there's a hiring of around 25,000-30,000 people each year by some of the top IT companies, which is there. Of course, we have different cities within India where we have perhaps major center where the offices are based. So in the north of India, we have Delhi and Noida and Gurgaon, which are the key centers. On the west side is Mumbai, which is the financial capital of India. South, we have Bangalore, of course, where I think all of us, at least in the panel, are kind of coming from, and it's called the IT capital of India. And again, on the west, on the east, we have Kolkata. So a number of other cities, etc., which are there as well. But like I said, the sheer volume of the moves which are there has kind of, not necessarily got the desired attention. Of course, it does create its own set of problems in terms of, the organizational needs. And that's where I think there is a real opportunity to see, how organizations can take advantage of what technology and other options are available.
Absolutely. So
Brian, you have to thank the British for unifying all of us with English. We have to thank the British.
But so if somebody moves from Mumbai to Bangalore, then, or from Delhi to Hyderabad, I don't know. I mean, when they move, are they going to experience how different is the culture when they move, and how understood will they be, or do they have to rely on English to get around? Will they understand the local language?
I think Pankaj can explain very well in this, right? Pankaj moving from Delhi to Bangalore.
Right. So it's, sorry, Suresh, go ahead, please.
Sorry. So I was saying, I myself have relocated from a tier 2 city to tier 1 city back then in 2006 and 7. At that point in time, the organization had very simple, straightforward policies, such as reimbursement of a relocation expenses with a very limited guideline. The policy document just talked about, what is the maximum amount which you can claim. In fact, I had my colleagues or friends who could help me to navigate my settlement to house search and related things, which I could settle at that point in time. Though it was extremely time consuming, home finding in India can be challenging even today. But I think scenario is slowly changing. organization has started taking it seriously, as there could be, there are mass movements happening, mass hirings happening. For instance, companies are starting, their entities in different locations and in India. Unlike earlier, it was only Hyderabad, Pune, and Bangalore, but organizations are going, to tier 2, tier 3 locations. Obviously, there is a huge market, and obviously HR and mobility teams have to actually now re-navigate the entire policy and stuff like that. Yeah.
Okay.
And for instance, it was 15 years back. Now the millennial generation, or so-called smartphone generation, may not depend on their known ones, rather expect more support from companies and some form and shape.
Okay. I mean, and what I find quite interesting is that increasingly we're seeing that India domestic moves are becoming the responsibility of the global mobility team. And I think we looked at this, and what we found is that in 44% of cases in our survey, GM was responsible for India domestic, 31% was elsewhere in HR, and 25% was outside HR. If we looked at that a few years ago, that wouldn't be sitting in global mobility. Global mobility tended to do international transfers and quite often US domestic. And that was about it. India domestic was not on the radar. Now, I suppose the interesting question is why? Why are more and more companies turning to global mobility to look at India domestic moves? I mean, I don't know, whether Venkatesh, from your experience, you might get a feel for why we're seeing global mobility taking more responsibility for India domestic these days.
Yeah, Brian, I think at Bosch, the inland movements, the inland deputations, I would say, was always a part of HR earlier. And as we moved in 2000, and when the travel started becoming more, I think the companies felt that it has to be handled by professionals. So a lot of things attached to it. It can be the relocation, their allowance payments, the salaries, and finding of schools and the home. So I think it brings a lot of complexity. So this is what was also felt. So that's the reason why it got cascaded into the global mobility teams. And we have a set of, I would say, the subject matter experts in-house who looks into these requirements. Yes, Brian.
Nicola's raised the question of Indian bureaucracy, and I know people say that the British invented bureaucracy, but India perfected it. So, I mean, my question, I'll ask this one to you, if I may, Rahina, is do you think that the level of bureaucracy is becoming a bit of a stumbling block? I think you're on mute, Rahini. You're on mute.
Sorry, Brian. So I was just saying that I don't think that the Indian bureaucracy has been such a limiting factor in recent years, at least not for the last 10 years or so. We see a lot of change in the government, even in terms of just the tax compliances as well. You see a lot of digitization. So we see that to a certain extent, India is changing and changing for the better. At least that's been my experience. I'm sure that Suresh and Venkatesh can give their inputs as well. But my experience has been it's getting better.
Okay, I'll move on the conversation a little bit, actually, because what I want to do is when we're talking about domestic relocation, I suppose one of the questions is what's in the package. And what our report found is that 50% of cases, it's simply money. You're given a lump sum and told, look after yourself and move. 31%, you're given no money, but you just have your expenses reimbursed. You have services. And then 19%, it's a mixture. So Suresh, in your case, are you a lump sum policy for your domestic moves, or are you expense reimbursement or a mixture?
There are two moments, actually. One is voluntary, wherein we don't pay anything to the employee because they're asking voluntary, they will move to their whichever location preferred. Second is non-voluntary, wherein there is a project task, client task, or the organization asks for a movement. we do pay them on a reimbursement model on actuals to a cap. There is a cap amount, and we do pay them to that amount, which is reimbursement, so that there is a tax savings also. And also there are obviously differentiation. For junior roles, it's only one-time allowances as a reimbursement model, and for senior roles, probably for instance VIP, there is a familiarization visit, and thereafter the reimbursement model of the fixed allowances. So that exists. But if you ask me, is there an extensive policy around it? It's very, very simple and straightforward.
Okay, and Venkatesh, for your company, I mean, do you tend to go lump sum, or is it do you provide services?
Yeah, I think we fall into that 50% category. So we provide a lump sum,
give them cash.
and we give them cash, and we ask them to take care of their requirements, because it depends whether people would like to travel single or go with family, school-going kids and things like that. So it totally depends. So we, instead of catering to every requirement, we bucket all these requirements separately, status-wise, and that's how we have designed our policy, so that it is catered to their specific requirements.
Okay, and here's a very interesting point that came out of our survey: is 75% of companies in our survey did not actually use their RMC network for managing the moves. And I suppose that raises the question. I just want to get into a bit of debate about why that is. The sort of things we were hearing was that if we use the RMC network, well, we don't tend to use them because we don't tend to use their DSPs, because we just let people get on with it. So we're not providing that service, even though it's a very different move. You know, it's not like moving, I don't know, New York to LA. You know, it's as we talked about, very culturally, it's quite a different move to move across state. So I mean, but they're not using the RMCs. When they do use the RMC, you know, they might be using it for a little bit of managing the lump sum reimbursement, or maybe a little bit of expense management, but they're not using it for the, if you like, the typical DSP services. Maybe it's a cost issue. Maybe it's just that there's no budget for people to move domestically, and therefore say we're not going to pay an RMC because we don't have any budget. But let me ask that one. Maybe I'll come back to you, Suresh. Why do you think companies are not using their RMC networks for India domestic moves?
Yeah, you're right, Brian. As you said, the cost is a factor. Of course, Indian tier 1 or tier 2 IT organization, I don't think they have any RMC internally, RMC which they actually help with. Of course, maybe some multinational organization may have, but Indian organization perceive that it's very expensive, for a simple reason that they cannot actually afford moving thousands of people and also paying RMC at the same time. So that's the only reason I can think of.
Okay.
Yeah, I would second Suresh on that.
Yeah.
Basically, most of the companies will have their entities, their branch offices across India. So it's the HR Connect that works very well in such situations.
Okay, well, I mean, we are a technology company, and obviously when you've got a process where there's not a lot of money and it's something that can be in some ways assisted with technology, and it's in the mobility space, then that's something that, you know, that we see as something that, you know, we want to get involved with. I mean, we believe that technology can probably save about 15 to 20 hours of internal work, and I'm going to bring Nitsan onto that. But we do think that a lot of internal work on each move can be saved through using technology, and we can help these moves much more quickly. What I'm now going to do, I'll bring you guys back on in a moment, but I'm going to bring Nitsan into the discussion. So Nitsan, hello again. So can you just tell us a little bit about, you know, we are meant to be a technology show. We haven't really done that much technology yet. So let's dive into the technology for the remaining, you know, what have we got, 15, 20 minutes or so. And let's talk about how technology can really help manage India domestic moves, and maybe show something that's quite radical here.
Sounds good. So you started with that statement, right, about time saving, and we spend a lot of time with companies who are managing those moves to try and see how to optimize that and how to reduce the time that is being spent currently on different employee moves by the employees as well as by the HR team. So there are actually two buckets of time that are being wasted due to the current processes or some of the inefficiencies. And some of the things we've heard on kind of what is generating that work is related to either manual work, right? So the need to get documents signed and to get communication about processes and briefs. And a lot of that was created from incoming questions, right? So there are questions that people who relocate have, and as Suresh and others said, the culture was to ask someone and to look for someone who's local. But now some of the generation or people who are moving got into a place where those questions are going to the company, and that's created a lot of work, because as we see in so many areas in mobility, it's the same questions over and over again. So with those two things in mind, right, how can we help communicate, create a place for the employee where it's everything relocation related in one place, as well as leverage the ability for them to learn from other people's experiences, right? How did others sort, another person who moved from Pune to Bangalore has sorted it out before, and which moving company did they use, and which areas did they live in, etc. Bring all that knowledge into a product that is giving a digital experience. So let me share my screen and show a few examples of how that works. All right, so we're back on the platform. I switched the language back to English, more for me than for the panel. I know you all could get with what was here before in Canada. So we are now looking at the view for the employee. And as I stated, this is the one place for me as the employee to help me sort out everything related to that move. And that will include things related to the destination, right? So everything about the destination, schools, where to live, even the local culture and learning the local language and selecting moving companies and etc. 2, actions. What do I need to do? And that's what are the things I need to do, such as settling in, but also company-specific actions. So this tool also is being used by companies as a pre-boarding tool, which means we get the benefits of those thousands of grads that are joining are much more prepared for day one, and we are saving precious time with helping them in that process, right? So do a lot of the work related to onboarding ahead of day one, as well as the relocation related work. And I can see all my contact in one place, and I'll share more of that. And of course, we have the money, and that works in a number of ways, either through the lump sum relocation allowance, and that can be disbursements of the amounts in Indian rupees, or the process of submitting receipt and automating that process as well, which unlock a lot of data. Again, some of the work we've done with companies who already implemented with us, we identified that even if they had an internal tool for expense management, the mobility team had very little visibility to what is actually the spend is going on. Which categories of money are they? What are employees spending the money? And is it even enough for them? Is it the right amount, etc.? So we have managed to use data again in order to visualize that. I'm not going to get today, we won't have enough time to look into the management platform, the one for HR and mobility team. We will spend a full session in 2 weeks' time on that. So I'm not going to touch on that, but that's also included as part of this package. So that's relating to the money delivery. There is also the pay later product, which can be an add-on or not. etc., and also handle some of that cash expense. Now, the platform is fully customizable, so the amounts we saw there, of course, will change per population and per employee who is moving, per location, etc. We are now looking at the platform to Bangalore, and I can see as the employee what are the list of actions that I need to complete. Right, so it can start for me signing my assignment letter, which I can sign from my mobile phone, and it can be any other document, unlimited level of documents that I can sign here and start my onboarding. Either it's to the company or an offer letter, etc., to actually looking on a category. And if I want to explore more around settling in some of the admin I will need to do, right, when I move between states in India, register to the health services, register my vehicle to the new state. I need to update my address, right? So I can just click here and I have a bite-sized content that tells me these are the three main things where you need to update your details, your address. I can click here on one of them, and that will take me into a digital brief that explain me what will I need to do, what are the relevant links to do it, and how to get that done, right? So just bringing all that big to-do list into a single place, sharing with me how others have done it, and allowing me to progress in doing those things, and again, save time, reduce the number of questions I need to ask, and drive efficiencies for both mobility and to the employee. If I'm looking at other sessions on the platform around the destination, so obviously there's a lot of information around housing and which are the most popular websites to look for accommodation in the city that I'm moving to. And I can see here when I'm going to Bangalore, some baseline information in terms of how long does it take to find a place, and which websites are the most popular. Megabricks is the number one, and 99 Acres is number two. Kind of, I can go and engage and explore more of that. I can get tips and tricks from others. I can see what percentage of my colleagues went with furnished properties versus partly furnished properties or unfurnished, right? So most people go for furnished, I can see here. And that powerful ability, right? Because the volumes of moves are so big in India, we are able to use the data of people who moved before in order to share the knowledge with the next person that is moving and provide that as data insights also for the employer, right? So there's a lot of use of data in terms of supporting decision-making, providing a digital experience, and helping people make better decisions. Other areas around housing are prices. So I can see the average prices in Bangalore based on public available sources, but also what my colleagues are actually spending and how long they take them to commute to work and how do they commute to work. And I can see that, the breakdown between those who are using the bus to those who are driving, and I can see, about 9% are cycling, etc. Which property they look, popular neighborhoods they live in, and the same on all the areas of the relocation, right? So even the learning Canada, how do I learn the language if I've never had a chance to do that? What's the differences in the culture from the states I'm moving to? More about education, how the school system work, how to choose a school, which schools are popular, again, with my colleagues, not just anyone there, but actually other people. What's the process of enrolling to a school, really providing the whole support to the employee, as well as a dedicated platform also to the spouse, right? So the spouse has access to the platform and they can see all the information. And if I go on into our directories, they can also have here the list of vendors. And the value of these vendors is that employees can even add their own. So if let's say I'm looking at shipping and vendors who can provide shipping services, I can see the vendors who are available. I can see the ranking by my colleagues, who they had a bad experience, who they had a good experience with. I can read the reviews, and I can even add my own, right? So if I ended up using someone else, I can just add another provider, or give the rating about that provider and share my knowledge with the next person, and we gamify that experience, right? So every time I share an insight, we unlock rewards to help people, encourage them to share even more. Other areas that are here also on the platform is the ability to see my key contacts, right? So everyone I will need to engage with in the process, in the company. I can have kind of the digital business card. I can submit the questions directly to the HR help desk or to the relevant team and make sure that I do that. There's also support available for me, right? So I can have a chat here if I have a question or request a callback, which helps, again, be the first line of support, right? Offloading more work for HR and GM, so less questions are getting to them. We are providing kind of the first line support by real people, and that's only need to pass on the escalations, which provide further savings, and that's how we get to those 15 to 20 hours of time saved for every move in terms of the time spent by HR, as well as additional 50 hours that the employee who is relocating is saving.
Okay, so
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no, it's an amazing platform, and I think one of the things I'd ask Nitz then is that, just looking at some of the comments here. I mean, here's a comment from Lisa Johnson. Domestic relocation in many countries is still in its early maturity stages as far as being an organised support for a talent strategy. It's all about saving money and just let the employee figure it all out. And I think, that raises questions around, duty of care, because people are moving, thousands of miles in the case of India, quite often. And they've got legal obligations. I mean, you talked about the passport there. You've got legal obligations people have to deal with. Whereas this is quite a low-cost platform that allows people to effectively take their lump sum or their expenses, however it's done, but to get that level of service that actually allows them to manage their move efficiently and effectively. I mean, is that what you've been finding?
Yeah, and I agree completely with the comment. I think what we've seen is that the pain, right, of relocating domestically is lower than the pain of an international relocation, right? And that means that also the business willingness to pay for that is also lower. So the business is willing to pay more on an international relocation rather than on domestic relocation, because the perceived pain, right, that the challenge it is for the employee as well as internally is lower. There's no tax, there's no immigration, there's much less complexity. But there's still value in providing that support, right? That providing the support, the duty of care, the efficiencies, the time reduction, all of that, there is value, but there is less money that is kind of available on the table. And that's why so many companies are going into technology solutions, because the only way to deliver on volume at a low cost is with tech and the advance we've seen, right, around digitalization in other areas, whether it's what we've seen last week with people trading on Robinhood app to how people engage now with their bank to how people book their holidays. Everything is becoming digital. The expectations of employees is to have a digital experience. And when companies want to stand out, especially when attracting tech talent and IT, with such big competition now in India on this talent, coming across as the first impression being digital first and mobile first, we've seen that deliver fantastic returns in terms of the employee experience. We've seen a huge increase in employee experience in domestic move in India with the companies we work with.
Actually, that might be a good place to bring the rest of the panel back on screen. So I'll just bring in, where are they? Rohini and Suresh and Venkatesh and Pankaj. Okay, so we've got everybody on board now from our Bangalore panel. Let me ask you, ask the panelists. I mean, Are you finding it sometimes difficult to get people to move because the package isn't good enough? I mean, I know there's quite a strong competition for talent, or war for talent, whatever you call it, going on. Is that something that is impacting you when you're doing these? I mean, Suresh, you talked about the mass moves, or even when you're just doing, the hires. Is that an issue? Just simply being able to attract people?
Yeah, my point of view, yeah, it is an issue today. Moving people, if company is asking for them to employees to move to a location of company's preference, the expectations are high in terms of incentivizing the entire movement in some form and shape. So it is a difficult area even today from the perspective which I can talk about. Of course, Venkatesh and Pankaj will have different or same opinion.
Okay, and Pankaj, what have you been seeing? You do a lot of consulting work in the area.
Right. I would say I think it's easier for the talent to kind of move to the bigger cities. I think they see it as an opportunity to kind of look at career move upwards, etc. as well. Even for the fresh hires, I think typically there are the key maybe 6 or 7 cities which are there, and of course I mentioned about Bangalore and a few other cities. So I think the expectation with them is quite clear that if they want to kind of get into good organizations, IT companies, etc., these are the few cities that they need to look at. So like I said, for fresh hires, there are 6 or 7 cities. For folks who are like lateral move, senior people, typically they'll move to maybe the top 3 or 4 cities, the metros within India. But certainly, I feel there was some reluctance earlier, Brian, which has reduced significantly. I think there's much more openness in terms of considering these opportunities.
And Venkatesh, I mean, you're Bangalore born and bred, and obviously, as indeed I think are you, Rohini, is that Bangalore seems to have been the major recipient of this talent coming in over the last, I don't know how long, is it 20 years now? I mean, it's been quite a while. How have you seen its change in your lifetime? How's the city changed, and would you recognize it if you went back in time?
Yeah, I think the city has grown in the last 10-15 years exponentially. A lot of movements the advantage with Bangalore is it's a cosmopolitan. Weather-wise, it is very good comparatively. And we see people moving in from most of the states, from north, east, west. Since the southern part of India, you see more of culture, and people are more humble, receptive. So people find it very easy to move into South India than moving otherwise to north or east. It becomes more challenging. So I would say yes, the IT revolution that came in the beginning of 2000, so that changed the entire topography of Bangalore city. The city, which used to be about 15-20 kilometers of radius, now it has gone maybe about 40-50 kilometers of radius now, with international airports coming in, the consulates opening up in the cities. So we have seen a lot of changes that has come in because of the movements. Yeah.
And Rohini, from your perspective, what would you say is the biggest change you've seen over the years?
Well, Bangalore is now a pub capital, Brian. So if you go pub hopping in London, I'm sure you can do it in Bangalore as well.
I wish there was. I don't go hopping anywhere.
So I agree with Venkatesh. A lot of people find it actually very easy to move into Bangalore because language is certainly not a problem. Sunit-san, I think that this is going to come as a surprise to you. Pankaj does not know Kannada. And he's managed to survive in Bangalore for ages now. So we are a very welcoming bunch of people. We like a lot of people who come down to Bangalore, and so it's an easy place to get into. And Fiona, you're welcome. Please move to Bangalore.
Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of people. When we did the show last week, we had lots of people who wanted to move to Italy because of the tax breaks that are on the show there. Now we're getting a lot of people talking about Bangalore, although I'm seeing a few people talking about Goa too. And on this point, I'm going to bring Julia back in. So Julia, thank you. I hope you found that interesting yourself, Julian. Thank you so much.
Yes, I did. I'd like to go to Goa or Bangalore, or anywhere. It'd be nice.
Absolutely. It's been an absolute pleasure. I appreciate it's getting late in the evening for you guys. So really appreciate your time. We're pretty much out of time now. So I just wanted to thank all our audience for taking part. We had people from all over the world, from California right through to all over India as well. So, in Europe, and just, the whole community is coming together. It's lovely. We're back next week with The View from the Top. So please join us there. That's going to be with Eric Tate of AIRS. The week after that, we're launching our new assignment management platform. And I really strongly recommend everybody tunes into that, because you'll find it amazing that you can get an assignment management platform without paying huge fees or waiting months for implementation. So that's really exciting. But all that really is left is for me to thank the panel. You've been great sports. It's been great having you on the show today, and I know the audience have really enjoyed it. So thank you, everybody, and good evening.